Hey guys, tonight we dive feet first, literally, into the slow, muddy rhythm of ancient Egyptian laundry. You're not a pharaoh. You're not a scribe. You're a regular, hard-working linen scrubber, and the Nile is your local laundromat. You wake up before Ra's golden disk has even peeked over the palm fronds. The air is thick with dew and the faint scent of yesterday's boiled barley. Your house is modest, made of sun-baked mud bricks, with a reed roof that leaks when it feels dramatic. You're curled under a scratchy linen sheet that was clean 3 sleeps ago. The mattress is a tightly packed sack of straw that squeaks every time you roll, which is often because, well, straw is pokey. Outside, the Nile hums like a lazy drum roll. The birds are already awake. You can hear the caw of an irritated ibis and the honk of a hippo, who probably didn't get his 8 hours. You sit up, stretch, and immediately remember that today is laundry day, which means the next several hours will involve more bending, scrubbing, and stomping than any mortal body was built to endure. You fumble for your sandals, which someone has unhelpfully placed beneath yesterday's tunic. The tunic in question is stiff with dust and sweat, and has a mysterious smear on the hem that might be date paste or goose droppings. Either way, it's going in the wash. As you shuffle to the courtyard, you glance up and see the faintest line of pink on the horizon. The sun isn't up yet, but you are, because laundry waits for no one, not even celestial beings. In fact, if you wait too long, all the good riverbank spots will be taken, and then you'll be stuck scrubbing next to that one guy who swears loudly and smells like old lentils. You duck into the tiny storeroom, a cool and shadowy corner packed with jars, baskets, and an overly dramatic lizard who thinks he owns the place. You grab the wicker laundry basket, hand-woven, slightly lopsided, and already half full with tunics, loincloths, and a pair of shredded temple rags that your cousin swore weren't his. The pile includes your mother's ritual shawl, your brother's school tunic with ink stains shaped like ancient obscenities, and a fancy linen wrap someone borrowed from a noble's house and is trying to return cleaner than it was. Each item is a little puzzle. What caused this stain? What will remove it? And is it even worth the effort? You sigh and hoist the basket, already feeling the weight in your arms and the ache in your spine, pre-scheduled for mid-morning. Laundry isn't just a chore in ancient Egypt. It's a slow, squishy, sun-drenched ceremony of trial and error. The elite may wear their sheer white linen like they're gliding through eternity, but someone has to clean the ketchup equivalent out of those robes, and that someone today is you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time in the comments and let me know what sleepy story you want me to aim for in the next video. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You duck under the lintel and step out into the dawn-streaked alleyway. The streets are waking too, carts creaking, voices mumbling, goats judging. The air smells of damp earth and the ever-present undertone of fish and fermentation. As you trudge toward the river, basket on hip, a neighbor greets you with a yawn and an unsolicited critique of your posture. You grunt in return, focused more on the path ahead. Each step takes you closer to the water and further from the sweet fantasy that laundry could someday do itself. Historians still argue whether most Egyptians did their own washing or relied on professional launderers. There's evidence for both, but here in your little neighborhood, it's a community effort. Everyone pitches in, or at least pretends to. You pass the shrine at the alley's end and nod a quick thanks to the household god stationed there. Bess, the protector of home and incidentally one of laundry's few advocates. Whether or not he actually blesses your wash day is up for debate, but you don't want to risk his bad side. The last time someone mocked Bess, they lost half their socks to river eels, allegedly. Down by the water, the river breathes steam into the early morning air. The banks are still mostly empty, just a few other early birds, mostly older women with arms like twisted rope and eyes sharp enough to spot a stain from 10 cubits away. You claim your usual flat rock near a shady tamarisk tree. It's got just enough surface to balance your basket and just enough elevation to avoid the Nile's more nosy amphibians. You take a deep breath. The laundry awaits. And somewhere, you suspect, a royal noble is putting on a freshly pressed robe and wondering vaguely where his clean clothes come from. Spoiler alert, it's here. It's you, and it's about to get messy. You drop the laundry basket with a sigh that rustles the tamarisk leaves. The fabric heap slumps forward like it knows what's coming. One tunic in particular, a particularly stubborn tomato-colored piece, slithers halfway out like it's trying to make a run for it. No such luck, buddy. You're here for the full spa treatment. You kneel by the Nile's edge, your knees settling into the damp sand. The river is cool and gentle, sighing softly against the shore. You dip your fingers in, and it's like touching a secret. Smooth, a little silty, and, let's be honest, probably full of hippo pee. But the Nile is the beating heart of Egypt, and for laundry purposes, it's your best friend. You reach for the first tunic, inspecting its wide armpit stains like a weary doctor. The linen is coarse, sun-bleached, and smattered with evidence of a very full week. Smudges of ochre, streaks of date syrup, and, oh yes, that omnipresent patch of mysterious beige. You dunk it into the water and begin the pre-wash soak. Here's where the elbow grease comes in. You roll up your sleeves, well, metaphorically. Your sleeves are the problem, and begin to work the fabric against the scrubbing stone. These rocks are hand-picked from riverbeds upstream, chosen for their just right grit. Too smooth, and nothing comes out. Too rough, and you end up with tunics that look like they lost a fight with a crocodile. You add a bit of silt, scooping it up from the river bottom with a cupped hand. Mud, you've discovered, has its uses. It's mildly abrasive, clings to grease, and helps work the dirt out. Historians still argue whether this qualifies as detergent, but honestly, anything that breaks up goat butter stains is a miracle in your book. Laundry here isn't done with soap. Not exactly. Some people use natron, basically ancient baking soda, if they can afford it. But for the average washer, it's water, mud, friction, and hope. Your arms begin to ache, rhythmically scrubbing the linen against the stone. It's like rowing a boat that never moves, just goes deeper into sudsy despair. A heron stares at you from upriver, judging. You stare back. The heron wins. A woman settles next to you, dropping her own basket with a resigned grunt. It's your cousin, Nabet, the unofficial record holder for most dramatic complaints about washing. She squints at your technique and shakes her head. You're bruising the linen, she mutters, even though her tunics look like they've been sanded by pharaohs. You ignore her. Instead, you pull out your secret weapon, a hollow reed tube filled with crushed soapwort, an herb some swear by. It foams slightly when agitated. You squeeze a bit of the green mush into the water and work it into the tunic with practiced fingers. The smell is grassy, earthy, and only mildly revolting, kind of like the village elder's breath after a radish feast. Nabet peers at your mixture suspiciously. Trying to poison your laundry? Trying to impress the gods, you reply. The tunic starts to lighten, just a little, and you feel that tiny flicker of triumph all washerfolk live for. A victory not just against stains, but against the entropy of the universe. Laundry is strangely spiritual in Egypt. Cleanliness is linked to ritual purity, after all. Temples have rules about who can enter and what must be worn. Even the dead are buried in fresh linen, tightly wrapped, as if to say, I may be a desiccated husk, but I am a dignified, desiccated husk. You wring out the tunic and lay it on a sun-bleached reed mat to dry. The fabric flops like a fish, then settles into stillness. Now for the loincloths. These are trickier, not because they're bigger or dirtier, but because they tell stories you'd rather not hear. Skid marks, curious holes, and stains that beg more questions than you're willing to ask. You sigh and start again. Scrub, rinse, wring. Elbow grease meets Nile grit in a choreography older than the pyramids. Somewhere a priest is chanting, a builder is hauling limestone, and you're elbow deep in underpants. It's a comforting kind of monotony. Between tunics, you steal a glance across the river. Children are chasing each other near a docked boat. A monkey scampers past, clutching what appears to be someone's stolen headscarf. The owner shouts in protest, but the monkey flips him off, politely, in monkey terms, and disappears into the reeds. You turn back to your work, snorting softly. It's not glamorous, it's not heroic, but in its own absurd way, laundry is the glue of society. Nobody sings hymns about it. Nobody carves temple reliefs of your blistered hands. But without you, everyone would smell like sour onions and regret. One of the other women nearby starts singing an old washing tune, wordless and rhythmic. You join in on the second verse, scrubbing in time. The river responds with its own music, bird calls, frog croaks, the slow slosh of water against shore. Historians still debate whether laundry was a communal event or a solitary one, but in your case, it's both. You're surrounded, yet inside your own sudsy universe, present but adrift. The song ends, but the rhythm stays. Hands move, water swirls, time drips. Nabet nudges you with her foot. "Your mother's shawl," she says, pointing. "It's floating away." You lunge just in time, grabbing the edge before it escapes downstream. The fabric is soaked, but salvageable. You glare at it. "You traitor!" It doesn't apologize. You squeeze it out with the air of someone betrayed, then arrange it carefully on the drying mat. Sacred shawls require a particular folding pattern, a triangle, then a rectangle, then a fold over the heart. You don't know why, but you do it anyway, just in case the gods are peeking. With half the basket done and your fingers pruny enough to qualify as raisins, you sit back on your heels. A dragonfly lands on your knee, stares like it's about to invoice you, then flies off again. It's going to be a long day. But you've got elbow grease, Nile mud, and a very stubborn will. Let the next tunic try you. The sun climbs higher, a lazy golden eye watching your progress from above. Your back feels it first, warm, then hot, then borderline grilled, and you shuffle a little to stay inside the shrinking shadow of a sycamore fig. A droplet of sweat rolls down your neck, pausing at your collarbone like it's weighing its options. It chooses down your spine. Bold choice. The second half of the basket awaits, looking bulkier somehow, despite physics and your deep desire for it to disappear. You reach in and pull out a linen headcloth, stiff with dust and something that might be goat snot. You don't ask. You simply dunk it in the water and begin again. Scrub, rinse, repeat. Nearby, an older woman named Taya is humming and slapping a tunic against a flat basalt rock like it insulted her ancestors. She doesn't speak much, but she makes a mean laundry paste from crushed acacia pods, mashed dates, and something she won't identify, but smells faintly of onions and fear. She nods at you, then gestures at her stone. You scoot closer, curious. She holds up a particularly stained cloth and begins her process. A scoop of the mysterious goo, a splash of river water, and then aggressively smashing the fabric in rhythmic bursts. You lean in, sniff, and immediately regret it. Still, the stain lifts, slowly, stubbornly, but it does. You blink in admiration. "Trade secret," she says. You wonder aloud if pharaohs use anything better. She shrugs. "Pharaohs don't do laundry." A fair point. Historians still debate whether royal garments were actually washed or simply replaced. Some claim the finer linens were ritually burned after use. Others believe they were entrusted to an elite class of laundresses. Either way, no pharaoh ever crouched by the Nile, scraping mud off a kilt while a hippo watched disapprovingly. You are clearly not a pharaoh. You're halfway through a pillowcase, stuffed with reeds, not goose down. And no, You don't want to know how long since it was washed last. When you hear the bell, it's a simple copper ringer tied to the village's laundry post, not for emergencies, unless a soap shortage qualifies, but more a gentle summoning, a call for the next water run. You groan, because laundry doesn't just mean washing, it means fetching water. Again, with practiced fingers, you tie off your work with a looped reed cord, securing the damp pile for drying, and hoist a clay jug onto your shoulder. The jug is heavy, misshapen, and probably older than you are. It sloshes with each step, and you wobble like a drunken ibis. The path to the water station winds past a pen of goats who eyeball you like you're plotting something suspicious. One bleats dramatically as you pass. You're not convinced it's not personal. Reaching the reed-covered cistern, you lower the jug with a rope pulley and wait for the telltale glug as it fills. It's slow. Everything in ancient Egypt is slow. The building of temples, the flooding of the Nile, even the arguments. I respectfully disagree, Nebamun, but may I point out, your hypothesis is camel dung. The jug fills. You hoist it. It sloshes again. You sigh again. You begin the return walk, jug balanced precariously on your shoulder. A child darts by with a reed flute, tootling out a disjointed tune that may or may not be a hymn to the goddess Hathor. You nod respectfully anyway, just in case. Back at the riverbank, you deposit the jug beside your station and kneel once more. Taya's gone now. Nabet is sunning herself like a contented turtle, her laundry done, her judgment unspoken but deeply felt. You pick up a long strip of linen and raise an eyebrow. It's part of a ceremonial garment, usually worn at funerals or festivals. It's been soiled with something, possibly incense ash, possibly lamb fat, possibly both. You pause for a moment, fingertips grazing the embroidered edge. There's a falcon stitched in red thread, wings outstretched. Horus, maybe, or a really optimistic pigeon. Washing ceremonial garments is risky. The colors can bleed, the threads can unravel, and heaven forbid you mess up the symbolism. Once, you accidentally inverted the eye of Ra on a shawl. The priest wouldn't stop sneezing for 3 days. Scrubbing gently, you take your time. You hum a song under your breath, one your grandmother used to sing when washing your hair. It involves a lot of references to crocodiles and not putting honey in your ears. It's around this time you start to appreciate the silence. The others have trickled off. Nabet left at some point, probably to go nap under a fig tree and claim she was supervising the gods. The river is quiet. The heron's back, still judging. You rinse the cloth and wring it carefully, then smooth it out with reverence. It gleams faintly in the light, cleaner than it has been in weeks, maybe months. A tiny tear near the hem catches your attention. You'll patch it later. Because that's the thing about laundry. It's not just washing. It's caring. It's noticing. It's remembering whose tunic has the burn mark from the festival torch, or whose loincloth mysteriously smells of onions every Tuesday. It's a form of memory keeping, one stain at a time. You begin folding the dry items, tucking them into woven baskets lined with papyrus. Each fold has its rhythm. A double over, a tuck under. The folds matter. Too tight, and the linen creases. Too loose, and it flops. As you reach for the last item, a child shift, tiny and mended with blue thread, you pause. You smile. This one was dropped into the mud last week during a game of stickball. You remember the wails, the negotiations, the urgent promise. Please don't tell my mother. You didn't. You just washed it. And now it's clean, ready for more mud. You sit back, spine creaking like a reed boat. The sun is dipping lower, casting gold over the Nile. The heron finally flies off, bored or satisfied, or both. Laundry's done for today, but tomorrow, new stains, new elbow grease, new mildly judgmental waterfowl. And you'll be back, basket in hand, reed mat in place, mud at the ready. You stretch out your legs on the patch of warm earth where your laundry station once stood, now cleared of its damp linens and questionable-smelling soap paste. Your back pops in two places, one reassuring, the other slightly alarming, and you glance toward the water, half expecting to see your vertebrae floating off like little lotus petals. But no, just the usual, gliding ducks, a glint of catfish, and a boy in the distance being scolded by his grandmother for dunking his tunic upside down. A classic beginner's error. The linen you've just finished is drying on lines woven between forked sticks, each strand sagging a little under the weight of household mess and human effort. There's a quiet dignity to it all. Even the toddler-sized loincloths look somehow noble, flapping in the Nile breeze like the standards of a very chaotic army. You glance at a particularly sun-bleached tunic and shake your head. Linen in Egypt was famously light, airy, and white, at least when new. But maintaining that pearly sheen in a country where every other element is dust, that's a miracle only rivaled by turning water into beer, which, incidentally, someone is attempting about 5 meters away. You rise, knees protesting, and wander over. The neighbors, bless them, have decided to try brewing beer, using a home kit that mostly consists of bread crusts, barley mush, and unearned optimism. You hover politely, nose crinkling at the sharp, sour smell of half-fermented grain. Want to try it? One of them offers, holding out a clay cup the color of regret. You decline, politely. You have laundry-related dignity to maintain. As you retreat, you pass a woman wringing out something long and vaguely scaly. You squint. Is that? Yes, a crocodile skin apron. You ask because how could you not? She grins. Used for funerary rites. Belonged to my uncle. You nod solemnly. Historians still argue whether such garments were practical wear or purely symbolic. There's evidence of priests donning crocodile leather during certain rituals, though some believe it was more about invoking Sobek, the crocodile-headed god of strength and fertility, than protecting one's thighs from ghostly danger. You ask if it's washable. She shrugs. Sort of, if you don't mind the smell. Noted. You head back to your little corner and begin organizing the dry linens into return piles. Tunics here, headscarves there, an alarming number of loincloths stacked like some ancient lasagna of modesty. You stop when you reach the laundry tools, your washing paddle, a smooth-edged stone that feels like a river-polished potato, and a rough brick used for stubborn spots. These aren't just tools, they're trusted allies, your team, if you will. You lay them out reverently. The paddle's handle is wrapped in faded red cord, probably from some old temple offering. You've carved a smiley face on one end, mostly to keep from crying during particularly heavy washing days. It's around this point that the laundry elders arrive. You hear them before you see them, shuffling feet, the low clink of bead necklaces, the rhythmic tapping of canes, a trio of women known informally, but not unkindly, as the Wrinkled Trinity. They've washed more garments than you've had birthday cakes. They appraise your work with trained eyes. Too much folding, one mumbles. Not enough elbow grease, says another, though she's smiling. The third just taps your shoulder, hands you a mint leaf, and mutters, "Chew this if the soap gets in your mouth." You tuck the leaf behind your ear like a medal. High praise in its way. One of the elders sits beside you and begins telling a story about the time she washed a royal scribe's robe only to discover an entire document hidden in the lining. Mostly shopping lists and love poems, she says, but still private. You laugh, then wonder aloud, were clothes used for smuggling secrets? Historians are divided. Some records suggest embroidered messages or hidden pouches were sewn into linen belts or headdresses, particularly during times of political unrest. Others argue these claims are overstated, romanticized by modern minds desperate for espionage in every thread. Still, you tug at your own belt, feels pouchless, disappointing. The conversation drifts to the uses of different clays and muds in cleaning. Nile mud, it turns out, contains a compound not unlike modern detergent, thanks to centuries of silt deposits and microscopic life forms. When mixed with soapwort or natron, the result is a foamy, mildly abrasive cleaner that smells faintly like old river dreams and papyrus lunch bags. You scoop a handful from the bank and rub it between your palms. It's gritty, cleansing, grounding. It's strange how something as simple as mud can hold such quiet power. Just like laundry, just like you. The sun dips lower now. Shadows stretch long and lazy across the village. You begin wrapping the clean garments into cloth bundles, knotting each with practiced loops. One bundle has a tiny reed whistle tucked inside, a child's payment slipped in as thanks. You smile. You're keeping it. A breeze lifts off the water. The lines flutter. One cloth sails loose and floats down the river like a ghost ship made of napkins. You chase it, miss it, watch it go. Taya appears beside you again, out of nowhere, holding a stick with a hook. She fishes the linen out with ease, like it's a carp on a line. You clap softly. She nods once. Laundry karma, she says. You like that, laundry karma. As you carry the final bundles toward the village path, you catch one last glimpse of the riverbank. Wet footprints, fading fast, suds like lazy clouds dissolving on the shore. Tomorrow the stains will return, the dust will rise, and you'll be back with your paddle, your soap paste, and maybe a better mint leaf supply. But for tonight, your hands are clean, your back is sore, and your heart is oddly light. You pass under a crumbling lintel into the shade of your home compound, arms heavy with fresh-washed linen bundles that smell faintly of sun, damp rock, and something sweet you can't quite place. Maybe lotus pollen, maybe fermented dreams. The courtyard is quiet. A single fly does a lazy figure eight over a clay water jar. A dog snoozes beneath the papyrus awning, one ear twitching to a rhythm only he can hear. You set the bundles down with a soft grunt and flex your fingers, still pruny from rinsing. There's something undeniably satisfying about a pile of clean laundry. Not because it's done, oh no, it's never really done, but because in that moment you've tamed the world just a little. Dust defeated, stains subdued, chaos folded into symmetry. You grab a reed mat and plop down beside your basket of drying tools. It's time for your favorite part, mending. Not every linen can be saved. Some you quietly demote to rag status. Others, however, earn a second life. Patches, stitchwork, a bit of creative weaving. One tunic has more patch than original fabric, which makes it practically royal by your standards. You begin sewing with the needle that's more fishbone than needle, threading with a twist of flax. Your stitches are uneven. You don't care. Nobody sleeps worse in a crooked hem. As you work, you hum a tune, one that's older than papyrus, older than your grandmother's knees, maybe even older than writing itself. The kind of song that seems designed not to be heard, just felt. This was always part of the laundry ritual, the sewing circle, the quiet conversations, the stories stitched into hymns and whispered across shirt sleeves. Laundry time was community time. Your neighbor, Anan, wanders over with a ripped kilt and a hopeful smile. "Goat," he says by way of explanation. You nod solemnly. Goats are fashion critics. He hands you the kilt, already half patched, with a leaf-shaped motif that looks suspiciously like a fig. You get to work, tongue poking out the corner of your mouth. As you sew, Anan chats about the market. Who's selling what? Which merchant has mysteriously vanished, and whether the new barley beer is better than the last one, it's not. He pauses suddenly. Do you think pharaohs ever had to patch their clothes? You blink. What a question. Historians still argue whether the elite wore their garments multiple times or treated linen like ancient Kleenex, use once and discard. Some evidence suggests royal laundry facilities did exist, staffed by teams who handled delicate fabrics and embroidered embellishments. But whether the pharaoh himself noticed a rip? Unlikely. I think they had people to patch their egos and their hymns, you say. Onan snorts, a fine endorsement. You finish mending his kilt and hand it back with a little flourish. He bows dramatically, which is tricky while holding a chicken. Where did that chicken come from? You don't ask. The afternoon heat deepens. Cicadas buzz like nature's broken harp. You retreat to the edge of the shade, where the breeze can still reach your ankles, and pick up another piece, a shawl embroidered with tiny palm trees. You remember this one? It belongs to the village midwife. She swears the embroidery wards off evil spirits and breech births. You once saw her spit on a beetle and call it a curse lifter. You don't question midwives. The shawl has a tear along the edge. You patch it with a scrap of sky-colored linen, deliberately mismatched. It looks like a river ribbon winding through a desert. You like that? Nobody said laundry couldn't be poetic. Just as you knot the final thread, you hear rustling. A procession is passing by. Mourners most likely heading toward the necropolis. You stand instinctively, watching them shuffle past with solemn expressions and baskets of offerings. Among them, a young boy carries folded cloth, funerary linen, you guess, destined to wrap a body for its journey to the afterlife. There's something humbling about that. You think of all the fabrics you've washed, all the robes and wraps and sashes, and how many of them might one day be buried, burned, or reborn as something else. In Egypt, linen wasn't just clothing, it was currency, status, a spiritual vessel, and sometimes a final goodbye. The procession fades into the sun haze. You sit back down, hands idle, heart a little heavier, but not in a bad way. Laundry touches everything, you realize. Life, death, love, argument, ceremony. It's the invisible background rhythm of a civilization, a silent drumbeat of soap and water. You reach for your last item of the day, a square cloth stained with something reddish-brown, pomegranate maybe, or wine, or both. You try not to think about how it smells like heartbreak. As you scrub, you notice the fraying edge of your own tunic. You sigh, another patch job for later, laundry karma, remember? A chicken clucks from somewhere very close. Annan's again, probably. You lean back, stretching your arms above your head, and close your eyes for a moment. The scent of soapwort clings to your skin. The river murmurs nearby, patient as time. Your job isn't glamorous. You'll never be carved into a temple wall or named in an official decree. But your hands hold history. They scrub the sorrow out of funeral shrouds, stitch love into wedding sashes, and wrestle the Nile itself into submission. Tomorrow the dust will come back. The goat will misbehave again. The beer will still taste like regret. But for now, you've done your part. And somewhere in the folds of clean linen, in the rhythm of paddle on cloth, in the whispered songs and crooked stitches, you've stitched yourself into the story too. You wake before the light fully blooms, your skin still damp from dreams. Morning in Egypt comes softly, like linen unraveling in reverse. You stretch your arms, joints creaking like the hinges of a grain silo, and shuffle barefoot out into the courtyard. A donkey brays somewhere nearby, rude but not incorrect. It is time to get going. Your basket of yesterday's laundry sits beneath the awning, the cloth now dry and stiff with desert air. You start to fold, shaking out each item with a crisp snap that makes your fingers buzz. The act is soothing. Fold, stack, fold again. It's your silent reply to chaos. You drape a finished tunic over your arm and sigh contentedly. This one's going to a merchant, a regular, who smells like dried figs and pays in sesame cakes. You like him. But before deliveries, there's a task you keep putting off. Dyeing. Oh yes, laundry isn't just about washing away the past. Sometimes it's about adding color to the future, usually a muddy, uneven color, if you're honest. Dyeing linen in ancient Egypt, let's just say it's more abstract expressionism than Pantone perfection. You gather your tools, a beaten pot, a mixture of crushed madder root, and a cup of something that used to be beer but is now more of a science experiment. You also have a few crushed mollusks from the last time someone asked for a royal purple scarf. That request ended in tears and a smell that still haunts your dreams. Still you try. You boil your concoction over a small clay stove, stirring with a stick that may once have been part of a broom. The liquid froths into a reddish-brown murk that looks suspiciously like old stew. You dip a scrap of linen and watch it darken, then cool, and, ta-da, it's brown, very brown, slightly orange if you squint. You chuckle, royal russet, you declare to no one, and hang it up to dry. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians wore vividly dyed clothing or mostly stuck with the natural beige of unbleached flax. While there's some evidence of colored linens, particularly among elites, pigments were pricey and tended to fade quickly in the relentless sun. But that doesn't stop people from trying. Your neighbor's daughter appears with a hopeful smile and a bundle of linens she wants sky blue. You nod solemnly. There is no sky blue. Not really. But you mix a slurry of ground lapis dust, milk, and a prayer, and give it a go. The cloth emerges a faint, grayish mystery. You shrug. She'll tell people it's storm cloud blue. You'll nod along. Color, like sleep, is relative. While the dye dries, you get to work preparing soapwort. Yes, again, there's no pause button on laundry, only rinse and repeat. Literally. You crush the fresh leaves and roots with a round stone, adding a few drops of honey for scent and maybe just a touch of superstition. Soapwort was your grandmother's go-to remedy for everything from greasy tunics to spiritual funk. She used to say, "If soapwort can't clean it, the gods don't want it clean." You believe her. A customer arrives, a young woman with a headscarf and a look of mild panic. She's spilled wine on her mother-in-law's favorite tunic. You don't ask questions. You simply reach for your tools and begin. You soak the fabric gently, murmuring to it like it's a wounded pet. You work the soapwort in with circular motions, letting it foam ever so slightly. The wine stain lifts slowly, reluctantly, like gossip at a quiet market. The woman watches with awe. "You're like a priest," she says. You beam, "A priest of elbow grease." She doesn't laugh. That's fine. Not everyone appreciates holy humor. Once she leaves, you finally sit, watching the dyed cloth swaying on the line, an uneven rainbow of ambition and compromise. You pick up a half-finished sash and begin hemming it. Stitch, breathe, stitch, repeat. Laundry, at its heart, is rhythm. It's in the slap of cloth against stone, the swish of hands under water, the flap of drying linen. It's music made with wet palms and sunburnt patience. And sometimes you swear the linen listens, like it's storing memories in its threads. Who wore it, where it's been, what festivals it danced at. Some garments seem heavier than others, not with grime, but with story. You once held a robe so fine, so intricately woven, it almost shimmered in moonlight. The woman who brought it in said it belonged to a priestess, or a thief, or both. You cleaned it anyway. The sun climbs higher now, and with it, the laundry line droops ever so slightly under the weight of your colored dreams. You sip from a gourd of tamarind water and stare out toward the river. Across the fields, children run with scraps of discarded linen tied around their waists like capes, pretending to be warriors or gods or giant lizards. You smile. That's the thing about laundry. It's boring, it's endless, it's invisible work, but it's also the backdrop to everything. Behind every triumph, someone washed a shirt. Behind every festival, someone scrubbed spilled beer. Behind every funeral, someone ironed a shroud with their hands in hope. You pack up your tools, giving each one a little nod of thanks. You rub your neck and feel the beginning of a sunburn. Again, you'll mix a paste of cucumber and goat milk for it later. Egyptian aloe, if you will. And just as you're about to step inside, a gust of wind knocks one of your dyed cloths off the line. You chase it, laughing as it twists and flutters, a silly brown kite with dreams of flying. You catch it. It smells like effort and soapwort, like life. You hang it back up with extra care. There, perfectly imperfect. By the time you return to the house, the air is thick with heat, and your arms carry the subtle ache of a full morning's labor. You pause at the threshold, brushing a bit of soapwort off your tunic. Inside, a bowl of lentil stew simmers quietly. It's not much, but it's warm, and more importantly, it's yours. You settle down cross-legged, dipping a piece of barley bread into the stew and chewing slowly. Around you, the hum of the household winds down. Even the flies seem too hot to buzz. But you're not done for the day. Laundry, as you've discovered, is a multi-phase process. You've scrubbed, dyed, and dried. But now comes the most delicate art of all, mending. You rummage through a woven basket where the torn and tattered lie in patient wait. The cloth here ranges from soft to suspicious, and your needle is more of a well-intentioned Prada than a precision instrument. You pull out a tunic with a long vertical tear, probably caught on a cart axle, or maybe a goat with an attitude. You don't ask questions. You just get to work. You thread your needle with practiced fingers. The flax thread is uneven, harvested from a plant your cousin insists was blessed by Bastet, though it's just as prone to tangling as the rest. You begin to stitch, making each movement small and deliberate, like writing tiny hieroglyphs only the cloth will ever read. The stitch pattern you use is called a whip stitch, not because it's painful, but because it wraps around the edges like a coiled rope. It's sturdy, subtle, and just a little elegant, much like yourself on good days. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian mending was mostly done by women, professional laundresses, or household staff. Records show it likely varied based on class and region. You personally believe whoever had the most patience got the job, usually you. The air smells faintly of cumin and river clay as you bend over your work. The afternoon is quiet, too quiet, until a neighbor's rooster shrieks with the intensity of a cat who stepped on a beetle. You glance up. It's standing on a basket of folded laundry, your laundry, like it just declared war. You lunge at it with your sewing cushion, not to harm, just to startle. The rooster flaps off indignantly, feathers trailing behind like regrets. You sigh and restack the laundry, checking each piece for stray talons or insulted chicken dander. Your dog, if you had one, would have chased the bird away. But you don't. Pets and laundry don't mix well, not in this climate, not unless you're one of those noble types who hires someone just to brush cat hair off their temple robes. Still, you talk to your laundry like it's alive. There, he didn't mean it. You're still the cleanest thing on this street. You go back to mending. This time, a ceremonial sash with an intricate border, worn at some minor harvest ritual that required dancing and possibly mild public embarrassment. The embroidery is sun-faded but still beautiful, tiny lotus petals stitched in alternating colors. You're tempted to add a little something, maybe a surprise symbol for luck, tucked inside the hem. Why not? Laundry, after all, is part of the sacred and the silly. It witnesses everything. The tunic worn to a wedding, the linen shroud used for a funeral, the loincloth someone wore when they fell into a public fountain. Each stitch you place feels like a tether to someone else's story. You remember when you once tried to make your own tunic from scratch, grew the flax, soaked it until it stank worse than fermented onions, pounded it, spun it, and wove it on a creaky frame loom you borrowed from your aunt. The finished product looked like it had survived a sandstorm, but you wore it anyway, out of pride and poor judgment. Your cousin still calls it your potato sack era. You still call it bespoke. Today, you prefer mending to weaving. It's less drama, more problem solving, and sometimes, if you're lucky, you come across a piece that tells a secret, like the corner of a scarf where someone has sewn in a tiny bead, not for fashion, but for memory. Maybe it was given to them by a lover, or a child, or stolen from a rival just for fun. Laundry knows things. Laundry remembers. You place the finished sash in your ready basket. It's filling up now, a mosaic of cloth that smells like sunshine and effort. You'll deliver most of it at dusk, when the shadows are long and the streets feel cooler under your sandals. Before that, though, there's time for one more thing: starching. Yes, starching. A truly boring miracle of ancient domesticity. You mix a paste of wheat flour and cool water, stirring until it thickens to a custard-like sludge. You dip a hem into it, then pull it taut across a reed mat to dry. The result? A little more structure, a little more respectability. You do this for ceremonial garments or for people who like their collars stiff enough to cut air. Some historians believe the ancient Egyptians used starch as a form of status signaling. If your linen was starchy and sharp, it meant you didn't work with your hands. You nod along with that theory while elbow deep in goopy starch. Irony, like sweat, is abundant. You finish your bowl of lentil stew, cold, standing now, because the sun has begun its slow descent, and the light is golden and lovely. You gather your ready basket, balancing it on your hip, and begin the short walk to the market square for deliveries. People nod as you pass, not because you're famous, but because you keep their clothes from falling apart. Laundry, you think, is like gossip, mostly invisible, absolutely everywhere, and rarely thanked. You hum as you walk, your shadow stretching ahead like a wrinkled banner. The dust of the path puffs up around your ankles as you make your way toward the market square, your laundry basket bumping gently against your hip with each step. The heat is mellowing now, but only slightly, like someone turned down the oven from roast to slow bake. You're sweating again, of course, because this is still Egypt, and you're still hauling enough linen to clothe a small theater troupe. The square isn't noisy yet. It never is at this hour. The fish sellers are packing up, the dried date vendors are counting their coins, and the scent of roasted garlic clings to the air like someone's awkward conversation you walked in on. You head to the usual spot, near the stall where a woman sells perfumes out of tiny alabaster jars, half of which, you suspect, are just melted beeswax and optimism. You set your basket down with a soft thud and begin your rounds. The first tunic you return belongs to a potter with forearms like tree trunks and a voice that sounds like someone sandpapered a goat. He sniffs the clean cloth suspiciously, like he's not sure whether to thank you or eat it, and then grunts his approval. You're fairly certain that's a rave review in Potter speak. Next up is a set of linen wrappings for a priestess, delicate, pale, and entirely too long for anyone mortal. She insists they must hang just so during her temple processions, or the gods get twitchy. You don't argue, you just hand them over and smile politely while she tries to remember if she paid you last week or merely intended to pay you. Spoiler alert, she didn't. Still, you let it slide. Temple customers come with fringe benefits, like access to bulk natron and gossip about upcoming solar festivals, and also the occasional side job mummifying someone's pet ibis, which, weirdly, pays better than laundering anything used by the living. You move along, handing over handkerchiefs, headscarves, and ceremonial sashes, each one folded with the kind of care you usually reserve for papyrus tax records or fresh honey cakes. Every delivery sparks a small human moment, a nod, a thank you, a shared complaint about how fast clothes seem to get dirty when children or politicians are involved. Historians still debate whether market squares in ancient Egypt functioned primarily as economic hubs, or informal social spaces, you're inclined to say both. After all, where else can you buy onions, hear rumors of a camel love triangle, and get your sandals restrapped while drinking barley beer out of a gourd? You pause at your favorite stall, run by a pair of elderly twins who sell dyed linen cloth, and argue constantly about what shade of blue best honors the goddess Hathor. Today, they're fighting over whether turquoise is an abomination or a revelation. You chime in with, "Let the goddess decide," which makes one of them cackle and the other squint at you like you've just betrayed all of Egypt. You hand them their laundered bolt of sky blue linen, and in return, one of the sisters slips you a tiny scrap of uncut fabric. "For your own tunic," she says. "You still wearin' that thing?" She gestures vaguely in the direction of your garment, as if it personally offends her. "You promise you'll sew something respectable soon, even though deep down you kind of love your threadbare look." It says, "I'm practical, but I also might be mistaken for a wandering mystic." Your basket empties slowly, and by the time the last item, a pair of child-sized trousers embroidered with beetles, has been collected, the sun is hanging low on the horizon, lazily throwing gold across the stone buildings. A breeze picks up, merciful and cool, and it rustles the drying reeds nearby with a papery whisper. Now you begin the best part of your day, laundry gossip hour. You sit on a low stool under the awning of the dye shop, sipping a cup of hibiscus tea someone left unattended and hoping they won't ask for it back. Around you, a few other tradespeople gather, potters, bakers, weavers, all winding down, all itching to swap mildly scandalous tidbits that won't cause a riot but might raise an eyebrow. Someone claims the scribe's apprentice has been spotted sneaking into the undertaker's hut after sundown. Someone else insists the high priest's new sandals are cursed because they squeak like frogs. You contribute your own gem, that a certain noblewoman has started requesting starch only on the inside of her gowns, for reasons you cannot begin to imagine but fully support. Historians often overlook this part of ancient life, the little things, the tiny absurdities that never made it into temple carvings or official scrolls. But this, right here, is what keeps the linen soft and the world spinning. Harmless chatter, shared air, and a collective agreement that nobody will ever truly understand the upper classes. You finish your tea, or whoever's tea it was, and stand to stretch. Your back cracks like dry papyrus, and you make a sound that might be a yawn or a small declaration of surrender. Time to go home. The square is dimming now, people packing up, cats slinking along the walls like they own the place. Which, to be fair, they kinda do. As you walk back through the streets, you admire how clean everyone looks. For now. In a day or two, their tunics will be back in your basket and the whole cycle will begin again. There's something oddly satisfying about that. A rhythm to it, like laundry has its own quiet heartbeat. And it's not just about stains and stitches, it's about continuity. You're part of something older than pyramids and less flashy than gold. You keep people wrapped, comforted, clothed, and if their collars also smell faintly of Nile reeds and elbow grease, so be it. You reach your home, your shoulders heavy, but your mind calm. The sun has finally dipped below the horizon, leaving behind that soft twilight that makes even laundry lines look poetic. Tomorrow, there'll be more to wash, more to mend, more to starch and fold and deliver with a half smile and an internal sigh. But tonight, the city is quiet, and your linen-stained fingers are at peace. The sky shifts into indigo as you step into your courtyard, and the faint orange glow of the hearth reflects gently off the worn limestone walls. The air is cooler now, cooler being relative, of course, but enough to ease the grip of the day's labor from your skin. You kick off your sandals with a quiet groan, dust trailing behind them like tiny ghosts of your market journey. Inside, the house smells of roasted lentils and last week's incense, a combination that shouldn't work, but somehow does. You pass the low table where your evening meal waits, bread that's already gone slightly stiff and a bowl of figs that, judging by their softness, may try to ferment themselves before you can eat them. But first, there's laundry to prep. See, your work doesn't end when the sun dips low. This is when the real magic happens, the kind done in shadows and quiet corners. You kneel beside your storage baskets, tugging open woven lids to reveal a fresh haul of dirty garments. Someone has spilled wine. Someone else has lost a battle with fish oil. And someone, a child, judging by the smudges, has clearly been rolling in something suspiciously bird-like. You sort the clothes by texture and color, mumbling a few curses under your breath, though nothing too harsh. The linen hears everything after all. You run your fingers over the folds, checking for tears or worn edges. A rip in the wrong place can spell temple embarrassment, or worse, uninvited draftiness during processions. Historians still debate whether laundry workers in ancient Egypt were considered skilled professionals or just glorified water haulers. But you know better. There's art in this. Each fold, each soak, each smoothed seam is a brushstroke in a larger canvas, one of civility, decency, and the basic human urge not to stink like the back end of a camel. You gather your tools for tomorrow, your paddle stick, your woven scrub mat, the special wooden comb used to fluff cloth fibers just enough to hide minor sins. Your secret stash of lotus-infused rinse water is running low, but you'll stretch it out another week, unless another priestess orders an emergency purification robe, which happens more often than you'd expect. Apparently, the gods are picky about sweat marks. Outside again, you begin your evening ritual, washing the tools themselves. You dunk the paddle in a shallow tub, watching silt bloom in lazy spirals as the day's grime lets go. The moon reflects faintly on the surface, and for a moment you imagine you're back at the Nile, elbow deep in cold river water, frogs chirping from the reeds like gossiping aunties. You remember that one time, years ago, when you dropped a nobleman's underrobe into the current. Gone, just like that. Floated away like a silk ghost, probably still haunting some fisherman's net to this day. You laugh softly. The nobleman never noticed. He probably assumed the gods took it as a tax. Inside, the silence is familiar, comforting. The gentle clack of your tools drying on the rack, the flutter of laundry strings tugging in the evening breeze. You sit on the cool floor and begin patching a linen collar torn along the seam. The needle glides in and out, steady and rhythmic, like a lullaby for your fingers. There's something hypnotic about this part. No shouting vendors, no cranky clients, just you, the cloth, and the memory of today's market scent still clinging to your tunic. A blend of roasted chickpeas, sweat, and something vaguely minty you can't identify. Possibly donkey shampoo. You think back to earlier, how the priestess looked suspiciously at her starch-stiff robes, how the potter offered you a fig in exchange for a rush job, and how the perfume sellers still haven't forgiven you for suggesting their myrrh smells like divine foot sweat. It's odd, really. You're elbow deep in other people's messes, and yet you know them better than they know themselves. The folds of their lives run through your fingers. You learn who spills frequently, who tears their sleeves from stress, and who starches their collars before visiting someone they aren't supposed to be visiting. You stitch and hum and think about tomorrow's loads, a wedding robe from the West Bank, a healer's sash slightly blood-stained, and a child's blanket, soft as breath, that still smells faintly of tamarind. Historians often focus on kings, battles, and temples, but they miss the glue that holds it all together. The quiet rhythm of home chores, the power of a clean sheet, the deeply underappreciated joy of socks that don't crunch when bent. You yawn. Your cat, because of course you have a cat, appears from somewhere, her eyes twin moons in the dark. She flops beside you with a groan of ancient disinterest and licks her paw as if to say, "You're late." You tell her about your day because cats are excellent listeners and terrible critics. She blinks once, then sneezes into the basket of mended cloth. Honestly, you should charge her rent. As you lay out tomorrow's garments in neat, hopeful piles, you wonder how many others in your city are doing the same right now. Stitching, soaking, folding, repeating. A whole undercurrent of invisible effort humming beneath the louder business of priests, scribes, and kings. Your fingers slow, the moon climbs higher, and you breathe deep the scent of linen, river, and a life stitched together, one stubborn thread at a time. The moon hovers like a polished silver bowl as you rise early. Too early, some might argue, but the laundry won't wash itself, and the Nile waits for no one. You shuffle into your work tunic, still faintly damp from yesterday's rinse, and collect your bundles. Today's haul is ambitious. Ceremonial shawls, everyday loincloths, the high priest's festooned overskirt, and something ominously labeled emergency curtain from House of Scribes. You don't ask questions, not anymore. You balance the baskets on your shoulders with practiced ease and head toward the riverbank, accompanied by a chorus of distant roosters and one particularly dramatic ibis, shrieking like it's being denied an Oscar. The city is still half asleep, just the way you like it. There's a certain kind of peace in the half-light, when even the gods haven't had their coffee yet. Once at the Nile, you find your spot. Everyone has one, and territory disputes over laundry rocks are real enough to have caused actual scuffles in the past. Yours is near a bend in the reeds, shaded just enough to keep the sun from baking your neck into leather. You settle in, set down your baskets, and begin the gentle ritual of river-wake scrubbing. Now, despite modern romanticism, ancient Egyptian laundry was not just dunking cloth in river water and whispering a hymn. It was physical, it was methodical, and yes, it required elbow grease. You start with the paddle stick, a wooden tool lovingly worn smooth over years of service. The process goes like this. Soak the garment, lay it over a flat stone or woven mat, and smack it like it just insulted your mother. Then twist, rinse, and repeat. If you're lucky, a passing crocodile will give you a respectful nod. That means you're doing it right. But your secret weapon isn't brute force. It's Nile mud. Mixed with a touch of natron, it forms a gentle abrasive that lifts oils, wine, and mystery blotches without tearing the precious linen. Historians still argue whether this mixture was originally used for laundry or corpse preparation, which honestly tracks. It works equally well on stubborn stains and stubborn ancestors. As you work, a neighbor joins you, Tia, who smells perpetually of coriander and has opinions about everyone's technique. She tells you you're scrubbing too hard. You tell her she's rinsing like she's afraid of water. It's all good-natured, the kind of banter built over shared mornings and mutual wrist pain. Nearby, a group of boys splashes noisily, one of them losing a sandal to the current. His wail of betrayal echoes across the river as his friends collapse in laughter. You remember being that age, your own sandal slipping into the reeds while your aunt shouted that Osiris himself wouldn't bless your feet until you found it. You never did. You're pretty sure a hippo is wearing it now. You wring out a freshly scrubbed tunic, shaking it twice to chase off wrinkles, then lay it flat on a sun-warmed reed mat. The drying process is crucial. Too much sun and the cloth stiffens like bark. Too little and it sours. You've learned to read the breeze like a sailor reads tides. The priest's overskirt needs special care. No mud mixture here, just pure Nile water, filtered through a linen sieve to catch fish, grit, and the occasional judgmental frog. You massage the cloth gently, like it's royalty, which, in a way, it is. This fabric has seen more sacred oil and incense than some shrines. You glance upriver and spot another washer, a lanky man from the north bank who always pretends not to see you. He's rumored to sing love songs to his drying laundry, but no one's confirmed it. Not yet. You consider waving, but settle instead for smugly displaying your pristine drying line. Let him draw his own conclusions. As the sun climbs higher, the river becomes more crowded. A woman carrying a basket of baby tunics joins the crowd, lamenting the price of natron. Another begins airing her husband's linens, muttering about accidental stew spills in a tone that suggests absolutely no accident occurred. The gossip flows as freely as the water. Someone claims Pharaoh's sandals are now embroidered with lapis. Someone else swears a crocodile stole their laundry soap. You try not to laugh, which makes it worse, and soon your paddle is slipping in rhythm to suppressed giggles. You return to the drying line and fluff a nearly dry robe. The texture's perfect, soft but crisp, like a well-kept secret. You remember the boy whose mother once thanked you because your washing made him smell like a person again. High praise. A breeze rolls through, rustling the linen like sails. You pause for a moment and just breathe. The scent is familiar. Sun-warmed cloth, fresh river, a trace of natron. It's the smell of effort and ritual and ordinary miracles. Scholars may write volumes about pyramids and hieroglyphs, but very few of them bother to mention that even the mighty must occasionally contend with pit stains. And who scrubs those stains? You do. You and the rest of this river-worn, sun-bronzed fraternity of unsung textile heroes. Your final load is soaking as the sun begins its descent, and you can already feel the work in your shoulders. You stretch, not gracefully, but effectively. Tia teases you for creaking like an old floorboard. You retaliate by pointing out she's got soap on her eyebrow. As the breeze cools and the shadows grow long, you gather your baskets. The linen is folded, the paddle is rinsed, and the river has claimed exactly one sock and a button today. Not a bad record. On the walk home, your feet kick up little puffs of dust with each step. The clean garments sway in their baskets like sleepy dancers. You're tired, sure, but it's the good kind of tired, the kind that smells like sun-dried cotton and small victories. And tomorrow, there'll be more laundry, more elbow grease, and probably more gossip about Pharaoh's footwear. You reach home just as the sun melts into a golden haze behind the distant palms, the horizon blurring like wet paint. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of dinner, lentils, leeks, and that ever-mysterious fish paste that somehow tastes better than it smells. You drop your laundry baskets with a satisfying thump and stretch your arms toward the ceiling like you're petitioning the gods for an early bedtime. Before you can collapse face first into your mat, your younger cousin appears, dragging a clay jar almost her size and declaring that her tunic is spiritually unclean. You're not sure what that means, but given the muddy handprints across the hem, she's not wrong. So, against better judgment, you agree to show her the proper way to wash it, because, as she puts it, you're old and wise. Translation: you know which side of the paddle to hold. Back outside, with just enough light left to see by, you return to the task. You demonstrate the fold-over rock technique again, trying to make it look dignified even as your arms ache. Your cousin copies you enthusiastically, but mostly just slaps the fabric like she's punishing it for bad behavior. Still, it's charming in a mildly chaotic way. As she flings mud with abandon, you muse aloud about the strange importance of cleanliness in Egyptian society. It's more than aesthetics, it's spiritual. To be clean is to be closer to the gods. Temples require purified garments. Rituals demand spotless robes. Even common folk, like yourself, bathe regularly and scrub their clothes until the fibers dream of retirement. Historians still argue whether this obsession stemmed more from religious practice or environmental necessity. After all, life along the Nile is beautiful, but also sticky, sweaty, and full of bugs. And if you're wrapped in linen from collar to calf, any breeze is a small mercy, and any stain a potential scandal. You rinse the tunic with precision and explain the value of sun curing to your cousin. She asks if the sun can also bless it, which is adorable and exactly the kind of logic that makes you wonder why she's not in charge of the priesthood already. You don't say that out loud. You just nod wisely and make the most ceremonial gesture you can muster with sore wrists. Eventually, you coax her back indoors, promising her tunic will be ready by morning. As she skips away humming a tune that might be a hymn or might just be about bread, you realize something peculiar. Laundry isn't just a chore. It's a form of continuity. You cleaned your father's linens. He cleaned his father's. And one day, someone will be scrubbing yours, grumbling about how much starch you used. Inside, with the baskets emptied and the last garments folded, you finally settle onto your mat. The quiet is almost suspicious. No splashing, no ibis complaints, no high priest demanding stain removal from a crocodile-induced incident. Just the hush of twilight and the occasional creak of the palm thatch roof. You roll onto your back and stare up at the ceiling beams, the scent of clean linen gently rising like incense. In this rare stillness, your mind drifts to the stories those garments could tell. The soldier's sash that's been to the edge of the empire, the merchant's robe stained with foreign spices, even the common loincloth that's seen more festivals than any noble's cape. There's an intimacy in this work. You don't just clean the garments, you handle lives, sweat, joy, grief, laughter, and too many spilled lentils to count. And even though you're rarely thanked, even though your name isn't carved into temple walls, there's something satisfying about that legacy. You remember a traveling scribe once said the laundry workers were the humble glue of Egypt. At the time, you laughed. Glue doesn't haul wet linen for hours or get blisters from paddle handles. But maybe he had a point. Without clean garments, who performs the rituals? Who goes to court? Who marries, prays, harvests, or mourns? You snort softly at your own train of thought, philosophizing about laundry, what's next, an ode to soap scum, and yet you can't deny the deeper rhythm behind the daily rinse. The repetitive motion becomes meditative. The slap of cloth against stone syncs with your heartbeat. Even the act of wringing water from sleeves holds a certain poetry, like squeezing time itself. Outside, you hear a neighbor shake out her reed mat. Someone hums a lullaby in a nearby courtyard. A donkey brays once, then apparently decides it isn't worth the effort. You roll over again, pulling your favorite robe over your shoulders, a soft, well-worn thing that smells faintly of river silt and lemon balm. You washed it yourself this morning. It dried in the sun, and now it wraps around you like a memory. Somewhere above you, the stars blink on, one by one, like lazy eyes opening. And as you sink deeper into the mat, you think of tomorrow's linen, waiting to be soiled, stained, and revived again. Same story, different fibers. Sleep doesn't come easily. Not when your muscles are whispering protests, and your brain is staging a late-night performance titled, "What If You Forgot a Tunic?" But eventually, you drift off into that shallow kind of rest, the one where your dreams involve laundry baskets chasing you down a Nile sandbank, and your paddle stick speaks in your grandmother's voice. You wake before the sun again. The sky is that eerie shade of indigo that makes everything look dipped in ink, and even the birds haven't started judging you yet. You roll to your feet, groaning a little, and shuffle to the doorway, where the breeze greets you like a sleepy friend. Somewhere behind the temple walls, the priests are already lighting incense. You can smell the myrrh wafting through the morning stillness. It's linen sorting day, a day feared by most and respected by all. You sit cross-legged with a pile of garments in front of you, some so ancient you're sure they predate the pyramids. Your job, sort what's repairable, what needs a deeper clean, and what belongs in the rag pile, which, let's be honest, is where at least 1/3 of the nobleman's underclothes should have gone months ago. You lift a tunic and hold it up to the light. It's speckled with oil, tinged pink from pomegranate wine, and, wait, is that fish scale? Historians still argue whether the elite wore perfume to mask hygiene issues or if smelling like a market stall was just a power flex. Either way, this tunic needs a miracle or a cremation. You sigh and toss it into the maybe with vinegar pile. There's a rhythm to this task, too. You inspect, fold, stack, repeat, and occasionally mutter to yourself. That part's essential. You don't really know what you're saying, but the garments seem to respond better when they're spoken to gently, like a cat, but less bitey. Some linens carry more than just dirt. They carry stories. One long sash you handled today is embroidered at the edge with tiny symbols, a name, a date, a crude drawing of a cat. Probably someone's farewell gift, or a wedding wrap, or a laundry worker's idea of a joke. You imagine the person who wore it, maybe twirling at a festival or sneaking out the back of a fish shop after one too many fermented date drinks. Then there's the bundle marked Temple Reserve. These are sacred items, rarely touched, and cleaned only by those who know the right protocol and can keep a straight face when told that a smear of goat's milk is a blessing. You handle them carefully, fingers just brushing the linen like it might shatter if you press too hard. As you fold each piece, you place them into woven reed baskets lined with leaves. It's a little trick you learned from your aunt. keeps the cloth fresh and less prone to absorbing the smell of, say, donkey sweat from nearby passers-by. You're not saying Pharaoh's robes ever smelled like donkey, but you're also not saying it. Tia shows up again halfway through the morning, holding a garment like it personally betrayed her. "What is this stain?" she demands, shoving it toward your face. You lean in, squinting. "Could be date juice. Could be sin." She doesn't laugh, but she does drop it into your lap, which means she forgives you. Probably. The two of you sit sorting in companionable silence. Well, mostly silent. There's the usual groaning, stretching, and dramatic sighs when faced with yet another ceremonial sash that smells like it's been through 3 lifetimes and a flood. You glance at the rag pile, now a small mountain. Tia's looking at it too. "We could start a new trade," she muses. "Designer dust cloths, temple blessed." You nod solemnly. "Only the finest lint from Osiris's personal curtains." There's a kind of joy in the absurdity of it all. You find a curious piece, small, square, unusually bright in color. A child's wrap, maybe. It's embroidered with a crude sun and what looks like a very round cat. You hand it to Tia without a word. She smiles and places it gently in a separate basket. Some things are too full of memory to throw out. As the midday sun begins to announce its presence by roasting the courtyard tiles, you finally stretch your legs. Your back makes a sound like someone snapping a dry reed. You ignore it. Professional hazard. Stacked and sorted, the baskets form a tidy little village around you. You feel accomplished. Maybe not victorious, but you've definitely won today's battle in the ongoing war against linen entropy. The next task? Mending. You retrieve your small sewing kit, bone needles, dyed thread, a few beeswaxed cords. You sit near the doorway where the light is best and begin stitching. Tiny tears in armpits, frayed edges, a ceremonial cloak with a hole that suspiciously resembles a goat bite. You don't ask. Sewing gives you time to think and time to notice how even the smallest repair feels like a kindness. You're not just patching holes, you're giving things another chance. And in a world where most people barely own more than 2 tunics, that matters. You pause to shake out your wrists, realizing you've been hunched for over an hour. Tia has long since gone, mumbling about garlic stew and overdue naps. The street outside hums with the low energy of siesta hour. Even the birds have stopped bothering. You look over your work. Stacks of clean folded linen. A few ragged survivors awaiting patching. A breeze flutters the hem of a drying robe like it's waving approval. And somewhere in the distance, a kid shouts in glee. Probably found that missing sandal from last week. The sun shifts, the shadows stretch, and still you sit, needle in hand, mending lives one stitch at a time. By now, the sun has begun its lazy slide toward the western horizon, and you're elbow-deep in mending what can only be described as pharaoh-grade undergarments. The embroidery alone tells you someone very important sweated profusely in this. It's always the fancy ones that tear in the most inconvenient places. You ease the last stitch into place with the kind of satisfaction normally reserved for finishing a long bath or a hot meal. Speaking of meals, your stomach grumbles, a hollow reminder that you've survived another full shift without anything more than a palmful of dried figs and water that tasted vaguely like clay. You rise slowly, brushing your knees, and carry your finished work to the storage alcove, a cool shaded nook where clean garments are carefully layered and labeled by type, status, and, though no one admits it, sniff test priority. Linen has a memory, you know. Leave it crumpled in the wrong corner, and it will sulk with permanent creases. Once everything is stowed, you wash your hands in a nearby basin. The cool water, a small luxury that makes you sigh. You splash your face too, ignoring the droplets that trail down your neck like lazy snails. The reflection in the water isn't flattering, but it's honest. Tired eyes, sun-marked skin, a smudge of something near your eyebrow that you don't remember encountering. You pause on the stoop and breathe deeply. The courtyard smells like baked clay and rosemary. A neighbor is pounding herbs, the rhythm steady and hypnotic. Across the way, someone's goat lets out a groan that sounds suspiciously like a judgmental uncle. As the shadows lengthen, you head down the narrow lane that leads to the riverbank, where most of your neighborhood's laundry workers gather this time of day, not to work, just to exist. It's an unspoken ritual, watching the Nile reflect the changing sky while talking about nothing and everything. Tia's already there, sitting with her legs dangling off a worn sandstone ledge. She waves you over with a bread crust in hand. You sit beside her, grateful for the company and the breeze. A pair of children chase each other nearby, screaming about some invisible demon. You're 85% sure they're just playing. The other 15% is cautious optimism. You both fall into a lazy conversation, mostly about things that don't matter. How many frogs you've seen lately, whether the neighbor's cat is possessed or just deeply sarcastic, if linen reacts to jealousy. Historians still argue whether communal riverbank gatherings like this served a real economic function or were just cleverly disguised gossip festivals. Honestly, you don't care. They feel sacred. Tia asks if you're going to the full moon market this month. You shrug. Depends on how many tunics explode before then. She laughs and offers you the last bite of her bread. You decline, but she hands it over anyway. You nibble it, chewing slowly while staring at the water that glimmers like old bronze. As the sun dips lower, temple bells chime in the distance. Not a call to prayer, just a reminder that time is still moving in case you forgot, which you had. Briefly, a boy with a reed flute walks past, playing a melody so off-key that even the frogs pause. But it's earnest and somehow beautiful. He nods at you both. You nod back. It's the kind of exchange that requires no words and promises no follow-up. You notice an elderly woman a few stones down the ledge, gently slapping a piece of cloth against a flat rock. You wince automatically. Too much force, not enough rinse water. But then you realize she's not washing. She's performing a ritual cleansing for an ancestral rap. her movement slow and reverent. You lean forward slightly, watching her in silence. That wrap, you suspect, is older than both of you combined. The way she touches it, like it holds the ghost of a lullaby, you feel something catch in your chest. Linen is never just linen, not here. It's inheritance, armor, a record of breath and bone and ceremony. The sun is nearly gone now, replaced by the first hint of stars pricking the indigo sky. Someone lights a lantern a few houses away, then another. The golden dots form a constellation of their own, stitched like embroidery into the village's night skin. You and Tia don't say much on the walk back. No need. Your feet know the path. Your hearts share the rhythm. There's something deeply comforting about ending the day the same way it began, shoulder to shoulder, carrying the weight of labor with someone who understands it stitch for stitch. Back home, you light a small oil lamp and hang your work robe by the door. You glance around your modest space, the woven mat, the small basket of scraps you keep for practice stitches, the corner where a cat sometimes sneaks in to sleep despite not belonging to you. You sit, you breathe, you pick up your last task of the day, a small linen square meant for a child's sling. It's not official temple work, just a favor. You thread the needle, the motion automatic by now, but this time you choose golden thread, a tiny indulgence. You hum as you stitch. The air hums back. And in that shared silence you feel, perhaps for the first time today, truly clean. The linen square glows softly in the lamplight, its golden thread catching tiny glimmers with each flick of your wrist. Your stitches are slow now, not because you're tired, though you are, but because you're savoring the quiet, that special hush that settles after the fires have gone out, and the temple gongs have stopped announcing other people's problems. You tie off the final knot and run your thumb over the seam. It's smooth. You smile to yourself. Not bad for something stitched between yawns. You fold it gently and tuck it into a pouch by the door. Tomorrow you'll leave it at the market for the woman with the quiet eyes and the toddler who seems to live exclusively on honey and defiance. Your room is warm but not stifling. Outside, the occasional shuffle of sandals on packed earth echoes like whispers. Someone sneezes 2 houses down. A donkey brays in the distance as if trying to file a formal complaint about bedtime. You stretch, your back popping like a papyrus scroll that's been rolled too tightly. Tomorrow, you'll have to deal with that mystery stain on the temple priest's ceremonial sash, the one that smells suspiciously like date wine and guilt. But not tonight. Tonight, you're going to rest. You reach for the water jar and sip, the clay cool against your lips. It's not Nile fresh, but it doesn't have a mosquito in it, so you count that as a small win. You place the jar down and glance toward your sleeping mat. The woven reeds look unusually inviting, which is a bit tragic, considering they're usually only slightly more comfortable than lying on a bag of dried lentils. You settle in, the lamp still flickering beside you. You're not quite ready to snuff it out. Instead, you let your thoughts drift. You remember oddly a story your aunt used to tell about a crocodile spirit that could judge the cleanliness of your soul just by sniffing your laundry pile. If it smelled like shame and unwashed tunics, it would drag you into the river by your ankle. You'd laughed as a child, but now you kinda wish it were true. Might be the only way certain customers learn to pre-soak their linens. Historians still argue whether household myths like that crocodile sniffer were actual religious beliefs or just lazy parenting tools. Either way, they stuck. You think about that a lot. How stories are like stray threads. They catch on things. They weave through generations until no one remembers who spun them first. Speaking of stories, you shift your thoughts to the land itself. Egypt, in all her dusty, glorious stubbornness. The Nile rolls on like she owns the place, which, let's face it, she does. Everything depends on her. The crops, the trade, the gossip, even your laundry. You may scrub with mud and sweat, but the rinse always belongs to the river. You once saw a papyrus scroll at the back of a scribe's booth, half unraveled. It listed every item required for preparing linen for burial. The list was ridiculous. Oils, resins, protective amulets, prayers at specific washing intervals, like someone thought the afterlife came with a dress code and a spot check. But what stayed with you was the final line, written in a different hand. Make it soft. No one likes to be itchy forever. You snorted when you read it. Still do. But also, you get it. There's something deeply human about that, about wanting the dead to be comfortable, about recognizing that a good piece of fabric can mean peace in this world or the next. A breeze stirs the reed curtain. You watch it flutter, a faint hush trailing in behind it. The scent of the river lingers in the air, muddy, floral, and oddly reassuring. It wraps around you like an old friend. You blow out the lamp. Darkness settles, warm and thick, but not oppressive, just whole. As your eyes adjust, you spot the faint outline of tomorrow's tasks, the laundry basket by the door, the folded lists tucked under a bowl, the extra piece of linen you've been meaning to bleach under the full moon. It can all wait. You close your eyes, but your mind, traitorous thing, still wanders. You picture what your life would be if you were born into another household. A scribe's daughter? Maybe. Your handwriting is decent. A brewer's niece? Possibly, though you have no tolerance for barley jokes. A priestess? Doubtful. You talk in your sleep and fidget during chants. But here, in this small room, smelling of soap root and sleep, you are the keeper of linen, the fixer of tears, the remover of stains both divine and deeply suspicious, and in your own quiet way you keep the gods presentable. Outside, someone begins singing a lullaby. You recognize the tune, an old hymn, reworded by generations of tired mothers. The melody dances through the air, swaying like a flame that's in no hurry to go out. You roll onto your side, one arm tucked beneath the mat, the other draped lazily over your midsection. You yawn, not the dainty kind, the wide-mouthed, jaw-cracking, possibly a snore will escape kind. And just before you drift, you think, if anyone asks, laundry isn't a chore, it's a spell. One stitch at a time, morning comes, not in a dramatic blaze of celestial trumpets, but with the gentle grumble of a donkey and the clinking of amphorae. You stretch beneath your linen shawl, bones creaking like old wood. Outside, the world hums to life. Inside, your day begins with the usual questions. What needs soaking? What needs beating? And who is going to pretend their tunic was already like that before the wine stain appeared? You pad across the room and open the shutter just wide enough to let the Nile breeze snake in. It's still early, just that pre-dawn gray where everything looks like it's been dipped in clay. You squint at your washing basin, half full. Yesterday's water is still good enough for the first round. Your laundry pile awaits, a slow mountain of shame and silk. There's a priest's wrap with mysterious red smudges, pomegranate, blood, pomegranate, and blood. A merchant's dust-caked travel robes, and one luxurious sash that reeks of lotus oil and bad decisions. You start with the basics, tunics and skirts, the ones made from coarser weave that can handle a little rough love. You lug the pile to your stomping stone, flat worn smooth by 1,000-foot squashes. It's half in, half out of the shade, which means your right shoulder will definitely burn a little before breakfast. The water in the clay tub is cold. You dunk the first tunic and begin the rhythm. Lift, beat, twist, rinse. Your arms move automatically like the tide while your brain wanders, because of course it does. It's hard not to daydream when your toes are wet and your hands smell like crushed soap root and Nile mud. Historians still argue whether women in your line of work were seen as low-status laborers or valuable artisans. You'd argue the answer is both, depending on how clean the linen turned out, and whether the temple priests were feeling generous that week. You hum a little tune, something about a jackal and a bar of salt. You're not sure where it came from, but the rhythm helps. Even the donkeys seem to appreciate it. As the sun climbs, your neighbor calls over the fence, a grizzled woman with a voice like broken pottery and opinions about everything. She asks if you've seen her cat. You tell her no, but you're pretty sure it was sleeping in the dye vat yesterday. She grunts, unconcerned. That cat's been indigo 3 times and seems to prefer it. You return to the next piece, an apprentice scribe shirt with ink stains that look suspiciously like hieroglyphs gone rogue. You scrub, but the blue-black lines remain faint ghosts in the weave. You sigh. Maybe you'll tell him it's a good omen, Osiris's beard or something. The sun is sharp now. You pause to sip from your water jar and shade your face with one hand. You look out toward the Nile. It's busier now. Boats drifting lazily upstream, fishermen shouting in that uniquely Egyptian way that makes even good morning sound like an accusation. You haul the next item into the basin, this one delicate. A musician's scarf, dyed with real safflower and definitely not meant for aggressive scrubbing. You switch tactics, gentle dabbing, light twisting, like you're handling a scroll from the king's tomb. Your fingers ache, but you handle it with the same care you'd use on a child's first blanket. Because here's the thing. Laundry isn't just laundry. It's memory. It's identity. It's someone's wedding robe, someone's mourning cloth, someone's festival dress that smelled like incense and spilled beer. You're not just a washer, you're a keeper of threads. You glance at the sky. Nearly noon. You're halfway through the pile. A good day. Your shoulders ache in that satisfying, I've earned my nap later kind of way. A boy appears at the edge of your courtyard, holding up a crumpled tunic like a peace offering. You know him, son of the butcher, always polite, always stained with things no one should describe. He hands it to you with an apologetic smile. You hold it up to the light. There's something brown, green, and it smells faintly of fish. You nod gravely, as if performing a sacred duty. He beams and scampers off. Later, you'll need to boil that one, twice, maybe with a curse removal chant, just in case. You hang the clean garments on the line, wooden clips biting into damp fabric. They flutter like sails, catching the breeze and casting pale shadows on the ground. It's strangely beautiful, like prayer flags waving over a temple of toil. You take a moment to stand there, arms crossed, watching them dance. You've done good work. Your fingers are wrinkled and your spine is threatening a mutiny, but the cloths are clean and the smell, earthy, herbal, with a hint of river, is one you'll never tire of. You return to your workbench and check the soap-root stash. Low, of course. You make a mental note to barter with the herb vendor tomorrow. You'll offer a patch of good linen and a handful of stories. She always accepts stories. And as the day stretches on, and the linen dries and the cats finally emerge from wherever they were judging you from, you sit in the shade, bowl of lentils in hand, and marvel, just for a moment, at the absurd dignity of it all. You, the humble laundress, mud on your calves, soap under your nails, stains in your dreams, and yet you hold a power no priest can deny, the power to make clean what was once unmentionable, to take the chaos of sweat and ceremony, wine and war, and render it crisp, folded, and ready for tomorrow. You lean back, eyes half-lidded, listening to the Nile and the wind and the soft flapping of fabric overhead. And you smile, and the widow says, "Right, no fences then." The meeting dissolves into tired laughter, but something has shifted. The water feels watched. The next week, two boys sneak in after dark. Try the heron stroke. One nearly hits his head on the stones. You hear about it the next day. Your stomach knots like wet rope. What you've built is growing beyond your grasp, and you don't know if you can hold it together. That evening, a girl asks you a question. She's maybe 9. Freckles. A tunic 2 sizes too big. She says, "If the pond goes away, will you still teach me in the river?" You want to say yes. You want to say no. Instead, you say, "I'll always teach the eel." She nods solemnly, then cannonballs into the water. Historians still debate whether medieval knowledge was seen as portable, whether you could carry wisdom in your bones, not just books. But you feel it. You are the book now. You lie awake that night, listening to frogs, to owls, to your heartbeat, soft and strange in the dark. You think of everything that's changed, everything that's threatened, and something stews in your chest. Not anger, not fear, just knowing, the kind that ripples. You rise before dawn, slip into the pond before anyone else. The water is colder now. It bites a little. But you stretch, float, and whisper to the morning sky, I am not done. Word spreads, as it always does, faster than a kicked duck, and twice as confusing. By the end of the week, you're getting strange looks at the market. The blacksmith's apprentice raises an eyebrow. The priest offers a sermon that suspiciously mentions unhallowed gatherings near unclean waters. You ignore it, sort of. Okay, no. You try to ignore it, but it curls around you like ivy, persistent and damp. You feel it every time you lace your sandals, every time someone says heron with a smirk. The steward returns. This time he brings a scroll. It's long, it's red, it has seals. He unfurls it like it's a weapon. New regulations, royal interest, community hygiene concerns. The phrase unauthorized recreational baptism appears somehow. He declares the pond closed until further notice. The silence afterward feels like the space between thunder and lightning. Someone mutters, but what if we just... Or no, he says. This is law. Albert tries to eat the scroll. You stop him? Barely. Historians still argue whether medieval laws were enforced more in cities than villages, or whether villagers simply learned to forget certain rules. But this law is hard to forget when a wooden sign gets hammered beside the pond. No bathing by order. The letters are huge. The anger is immediate. Children cry. Adults mutter. You go quiet. The pond stares back at you. Flat, still, off limits. That night, someone sneaks in and tosses a fish at the sign. It doesn't stick, but the intention is clear. By the third day, a kind of dullness sets in. No laughter, no splashing, no debates over eel technique, just dry feet and dry hearts. You walk by the pond and see a girl staring at the water like it owes her an apology. She clutches a soggy practice scroll, your old eel drawings, copied in crayon and mud. It breaks you, not into pieces, but into movement. Because this isn't the first time swimming has been declared dangerous. It's not even the 100th. Remember those Roman ruins, the sunken bathhouses? They got covered by soil and moss because someone said, let's not. The same spirit, different scroll. So, you gather your people, not everyone, just those who remember. You meet behind the mill, under moonlight. The air smells like wheat and rebellion. You say, they closed a pond, not a river, not a rainstorm, not us. Albert adds, and not the eel. There's laughter, the good kind. The pond might be forbidden, but the world isn't. So you walk, as a group, out past the fields, past the orchard where the air smells of fermenting apples, toward a place someone once whispered about, a hidden glen, a natural spring. You find it, shallow, cold, perfect. Someone yells, the new pond is dead, long live the mystery puddle. You nod. It'll do. The tradition begins again, not as loud, not as big, but quieter, warmer. Not just swimming, but remembering. You invent hand signals for secrecy. The otter becomes a subtle arm twist, the eel a waggle, the heron still nonsense, but beloved. You teach by whisper. You float beneath trees. You laugh softer now, but the joy is sharper, more precious. You become something else, not just a teacher, but a protector of breath, of motion, of all the slippery, glorious freedom that water gives. Historians still debate whether medieval rebellion was loud and sword-filled or quiet and soaked in puddles. You have your answer. One morning, while doing laps in the glen, you hear twigs snap. You freeze. The steward stands there, alone, no scroll. He looks tired and curious. Still swimming? He asks. You nod. He watches a while, then takes off his shoes. You blink. He wades in, waist deep, then shoulder. Then, clumsy but determined, he attempts a very cautious eel. It's not terrible. You help, gently. He doesn't speak much, but as he leaves, he mutters, "Suppose water's cleaner when people care about it." A small truce. The sign at the old pond remains, but no one guards it. And the mystery puddle? It gains benches, a rope swing, a name. The second sea? You carve it into bark, and below it, in tiny letters, always room for one more heron. It starts to rain, but no one really minds. You're soaked anyway, first from the pond, now from the sky. But you tilt your face upward, blink into the gray clouds, and think, at least no one can tell if it's rain or tears. Because something's shifting, not in the way you expect, not like a parade or a proclamation, more like moss growing back on a stone, slow, quiet, relentless. You start hearing odd things in taverns and bakehouses, sentences that begin with, "You know, in Constantinople, they," or "the Moors taught it as art." Swimming, people say now, as if it's more than splashing and frog-kicking, as if it has roots, honor, a form. You smile at this. Once people saw water and thought fish. Now they're thinking freedom. Remember that time you sank like a stone near the pig trough? Now you backstroke like a slow-moving deity. Albert claims he can dolphin flip. No one has seen it. But the enthusiasm is real. You start a scroll. Not a secret scroll, but a real one. With ink, with structure. The Book of Breath. It's got diagrams, eel poses, heron warming stretches. The section on otters is entirely decorative. The scroll passes from hand to hand, traveling in baskets of bread and under armfuls of laundry. People read it, then try, then smile. You receive a letter from a village 5 days away. It begins, "We tried the eel. We nearly drowned, but it was glorious." You pin it to your wall. Eventually, someone from the church shows up. Not a high priest, just a friar. Wears sandals, carries a bag of apples. He watches the glen, nods at the children, paddling like panicked frogs. Sits beside you, says nothing for a while. Then, "God made water before wine. That must mean something." You offer him a plum. He accepts. That's it. No edicts, no ban. Just space. Space to breathe, float, laugh. Historians still debate whether the late medieval period was truly transitional, or if people just started caring about things one puddle at a time. You decide it doesn't matter because it feels transitional. The glen grows, not physically, spiritually. Someone brings a wool blanket, and suddenly it's a spa. Another knits swim hoods, brown and itchy, but heartwarming. A bard shows up and sings a ballad called The 12 Drownings of Sir Lump. Instant classic. You now have pond days, not holidays exactly, but days when no chores are expected. The miller shuts early. The baker brings seed cakes. People sit on logs and talk about the currents in their lives. Grief, joy, awkward crushes on Fletchers. Water has become the in-between place where sorrows dissolve, where old wounds soften, where people tell the truth. You help an elderly woman into the shallows. She hasn't walked far in years, but she floats. You hold her hand. She whispers, "I dreamed I was a fish once. It was warm." The next week, she brings all her grandchildren. The glen ripples with new energy, and a rumor that the steward, yes, that steward, is training to swim the length of the stream that feeds the pond. No one believes it. Then he does it. Sort of. Okay. He flails halfway, then clings to a log like it owes him money. But when he emerges, he's laughing. He says, "Tell the record keepers I made it. They never saw the Roman baths either." That becomes your motto. You never saw the Roman baths either. You write it in chalk, on doors, on fences. It's nonsense and perfect. Evenings at the pond feel like gatherings at the end of time. Light glancing off water. Someone always singing something off-key. You notice more people bringing jars, collecting the pond water. One girl says it's for her goats. One man whispers, "It remembers." You don't ask what he means. It does remember. Not like a book, more like a tune. Every splash feels like a syllable of something you once knew. A monk begins copying your book of breath onto real parchment, adds illuminations, makes the otters majestic. A merchant buys a copy, takes it to Avignon. More letters come. They've tried swimming in fountains, in irrigation canals. One group built a barrel. They paddle like a tub. None of it's graceful, all of it's joyful. In one letter, a child writes, "When I swim, I'm not poor." You read it twice. You start drawing again. New positions, new strokes, new jokes. Octopus of uncertainty. Snail of strategic retreat. Crab of mild panic. They catch on. The glen becomes not just a haven, but a classroom, a temple, a mischief-making paradise. Children invent water dances. Elders teach old songs. Someone sculpts a floating saint from bread dough and reeds. It disintegrates instantly. No one minds. Even the frogs seem friendlier. You make it official. Every new swimmer gets a name. Not their real name, a water name. The girl with fast kicks becomes Rain Legs. Albert is Splash Lord. You are the Damp Prophet. No one knows why. It sticks. One afternoon, the sun is high, the water is cool, and the world feels, briefly, mended. You close your eyes and just drift. You wake to the sound of humming and splashing, familiar by now, like the heartbeat of a village that's finally remembered how to breathe. The sun dapples the water like spilled honey. You stretch, yawn, and spot two children attempting what they swear is the caterpillar of courage stroke. It looks more like synchronized distress. You cheer anyway. And then you notice something strange. The steward, yes, that steward, is talking to a traveler. Clean boots, expensive cloak, the kind that says, "I've never milked anything in my life." You squint. Ah, of course, a royal surveyor. He holds a measuring stick like it's a sword and keeps gesturing at the water like it might attack. The steward sees you watching, shrugs. It's out of his hands. Later, over blackberry cider, he explains. Apparently, someone important has heard of the second sea. There's talk of regulation, of official lessons, of assigning monks to monitor aquatic enthusiasm. You exhale through your nose, long and slow. You'd hoped it wouldn't come to this, but here it is. Recognition, the sweet poison of success. Historians still argue whether peasant revolutions failed because of sabotage or because the powers that be simply swallowed them whole and renamed them reforms. You know the look in the surveyor's eyes. It says, "This is profitable." That night, you gather the pond folk. Albert brings maps, bad ones, mostly drawings of frogs, but helpful in spirit. You lay out options. Wait, hide, leave. Someone suggests preemptive canonization. You move on quickly. And then a small boy stands and says, "What if we make it boring?" Silence. He elaborates. We swim with frowns. We wear beige. We chant multiplication. The idea grows. You test it the next morning. Gray tunics, blank expressions, rhythmic splashing. The surveyor returns, stares, squints, takes notes, leaves. You wait. 2 days later, a letter arrives. No further interest in Baptist arithmetic circle, unfit for tourism. You celebrate with a synchronized eel. That boy is crowned dullest wave. The pond survives, for now, but it sparks something in you. Not fear, resolve. You begin making copies, dozens, then hundreds. Scrolls, sketches, instructional riddles. You send them out with traveling tanners, with smugglers disguised as beekeepers, with wandering bards and erratic monks. A movement begins, not loud, but rippling. You call it the Guild of the Breath. They don't hold meetings. They meet in water. From Bruges to Barcelona, whispered lessons spread like spring floods. Everywhere people remember, not just how to swim, but why they stopped, and how to begin again. One girl from Florence writes, "When I swim, I feel like I've escaped, even if I'm still here." You tack her letter beside the first one, the one about eels. Time moves on. The pond gains new stones. Someone carves a bench with your water name on it. You pretend not to cry. You grow older. Your back aches more than it used to. You swim slower, but the water feels just as forgiving. You spend afternoons teaching, mostly through stories now. Children gather around, wide-eyed and dripping. You tell them about how it all began. The pig trough, the panic, the heron. They laugh. You say, "Never trust a dry foot. They don't know what it means." They nod anyway. Some of them draw. Some invent new strokes. One child swears she met a fish who gave her advice. Albert claims it was him in disguise. You do not believe him, but you do give her a scroll titled Advanced Dolphin Negotiation. It catches on. A bishop arrives months later, cloaked in royal red. He watches a while, doesn't speak, then removes his ring, steps into the pond, and floats on his back like an elderly starfish. You help him out. He nods, says, "The body remembers Eden, even when the mind forgets." Then he leaves. No edict, no inspection, just wet footprints. You keep going. The glen is full now most days. Some swim, some sit, some just watch the light move across the surface. It's more than a pond. It's a memory with edges blurred. It's the place where people are allowed to try and fail and laugh. It's where you began to forgive yourself for almost drowning, for forgetting your own breath. Someone builds a small stone marker at the edge. It reads, "Let those who enter leave gravity behind. Let those who float remember the first splash." Underneath, someone else's scrawl adds, "Also, beware Albert's eel impression." You think, perfect. This isn't about swimming anymore. It never was. It's about daring to do something useless. Beautifully. Together. You're drifting again, but not in water this time. You're drifting through memories of wet tunics and laughter, of whispered rhymes and slipping on moss, of the startled joy when your feet left the bottom and, just for a moment, you didn't sink. You're older now. The pond is quieter during colder months. The air has that bite of harvest endings, fewer cannonballers, more wool-clad watchers, but the spirit is still there, humming like a hidden current. You're sitting on your usual rock, sharpening a reed pen that never quite works, when a girl appears. About 12. Freckles, determined squint. She stands silently for a long moment. Then, you're the one who made swimming happen. You blink. "Well, I didn't invent water." She frowns. "But you gave it back. That counts." You smile, motion for her to sit. She does, knees pulled tight, fists in her lap. She tells you a story. Her father lost his shop. Her mother grew quiet. The world got gray. And then one market day, she saw a boy doing the snail of strategic retreat in a rain barrel. She laughed so hard she snorted. He handed her a soggy scroll. Now she swims every week, even in winter, in a barrel behind the baker's. "Swimming makes me brave," she says. "I didn't think I was allowed to be brave." You look at her. Really look. She's not telling you this for praise. She's telling you because it's true. You nod, say nothing. You've learned that silence is the deep end of understanding. Later that day, Albert, still somehow alive, still terrible at the eel, brings news. There's a noble woman, a countess, who's built her own swimming glen, heated, marble edges, velvet towels. But she insists on calling it a breathing temple. You wheeze laugh into your cider. She even has scrolls on display, protected under glass. One of them features your original otter sketch, the silly one. It's titled The Doctrine of Drift. You nearly choke. Historians still argue whether the rise of aquatic leisure in late medieval Europe was grassroots or aristocratically co-opted. You think, why not both? Maybe that's the lesson. That freedom trickles up just as often as it's poured down. Meanwhile, in the real pond, two boys invent a game that involves floating while reciting tax laws backward. They call it scribe fish. It is, in every way, terrible. You cheer anyway. More letters arrive. In Poland, a town has designated a quiet lake where people go to cry. They swim, they share stories, then they bake plum tarts. In Sicily, a convent teaches divine floating as a spiritual retreat. In England, a bard has written a play called The Drowning of Lord Grumble. It ends with interpretive splashing. You add them all to the guild's ledger. It's not official, just ink and dreams. But it feels official. You add footnotes. You invent a title for yourself, Archivist of the Buoyant Soul. No one argues. You decide to host a festival just once. You write invitations in clumsy Latin and slip them into carts, under doorways, tied to chickens. The turnout is shocking. People come from villages you've never heard of. Some bring drums. One woman has a duck choir. Albert announces he'll reenact his original Near Drowning. The crowd goes wild. The glen is chaos. Joyful, dripping, cabbage-scented chaos. And when the sun sets and the frogs begin their chorus, you light lanterns across the water. They float gently like stars that forgot how high to rise. People wade in and just watch. The silence is deep, not empty, full of stories, of bruises healed, of fears released into the current. The Countess arrives late. Her silk cloak is too long for the mud. Her guards are clearly baffled. But she kneels beside the water, touches it, and says, "It's warmer than I thought." She doesn't swim, but she stays. She asks if she may keep one of the silly swim scrolls. You hand her the one with the fish, wearing a crown. She bows. It's all ridiculous and perfect. You wonder if the glen will last another year, or 10, or vanish tomorrow, remembered only in a bard's exaggerated tale. But it doesn't matter, because the ripples are already out there. The breathing has begun, across fields, across borders, in bathtubs and barrels, in secret glades and holy wells. The second sea has no map, but everyone who touches it carries a little more sky inside them. The days grow shorter. Evening drapes the glen in early violet, and the mist curls in like shy company. You know the seasons are turning, not just in the sky, but in you. Your knees click like ill-tuned harpsichords. Your fingers fumble the knot on your cloak more often than not. Sometimes you catch yourself staring at the pond, not seeing the water, but all the years swirling beneath it. And you wonder, did it matter? Then a boy you've never met brings you a soggy turnip as a thank you gift. His face is dead serious. It mattered. There's a scroll now, traveling from village to village, inked on sheep gut, wrapped in wax cloth. It's become almost a relic. It's your first one, the one that started as a joke. A list of made-up swimming techniques drawn with stick people and annotated in smudged charcoal. It's been copied, miscopied, translated into Breton, scribbled on tavern walls, and even allegedly tattooed onto the back of a traveling friar who has no idea it's upside down. The Guild of the Breath has no rules, just one idea. Water doesn't judge you, and neither should people. It's spreading. Even the monks are catching on. In one abbey, the evening chant has been replaced, unofficially, by synchronized floating meditations. They call it aqua vespers. The abbot pretends not to notice. In Prague, a printer has produced pamphlets called The Catechism of Splash. They sell faster than sermons. Historians still argue whether medieval Europeans rediscovered swimming because of philosophy, rebellion, or boredom. You know the answer. They were tired of being afraid. One dusk, you walk the pond's edge one last time, tracing the waterline with your toe, like you're signing your name in silence. A heron takes off as you pass, graceful, quiet. Albert joins you, older now, mostly eyebrows and mysterious bruises. He doesn't speak, just walks beside you, holding 2 mugs of cider like they're communion chalices. You sit, sip, listen to the croaking of frogs who sound like they're giving a particularly bitter review of eel performances. A breeze stirs the cattails. Then you say, "We did a ridiculous thing." He nods. And somehow, you add, "It was holy." He grins. Still is. The stars appear one by one. You've forgotten most constellations. You name them after people you've met. The soaked cobbler, Lady Duckhands, the floating nun. You lie back, hands behind your head, and remember your first swim, the terror, the thrashing, the moment your chest filled with sky instead of water. You didn't know it then, but you just cracked something open, like splitting a nut and finding not just food, but music. The girl with freckles is a teacher now. Her students call her the Ripple Witch. She loves it. The Countess funds secret ponds across the region, each one hidden behind the lie of agricultural drainage projects. Albert finally writes a book. It's awful, full of drawings of muscular frogs wearing hats. You publish it anyway. It becomes oddly popular. You leave the ledger unlocked, scrolls stacked on the table, ink still wet. Someone will carry it forward. They always do. The last time you wade into the water, your steps are slow. The mud is colder, clings longer. But when you lie back, the pond catches you like it always has, gently, as if saying, "You've done enough." You float and breathe. The sky is very quiet tonight. The stars blur. The surface ripples out from you in perfect sleepy rings. You do not feel old. You feel light. Word count, 1054. On. Wind down, 300 words. Now the story settles, like silt at the bottom of a calm pond. You're warm, maybe a little heavy, with the kind of fatigue that isn't tiredness, but fullness. You've traveled through moss and myth, fear and floating, and somehow gently you've arrived back where you started, breathing, still and slow. Let it all melt now. The voices, the splashing, the silly swim names, the monks floating like biscuits. Let them fade into the mist, becoming soft echoes in the corners of your thoughts. You're safe. The water is behind you, or maybe it's still holding you. Doesn't matter now. The world outside might still be noisy, still uncertain, but inside, where your thoughts settle like feathers on a still pond, you are okay. No one is watching. No one is judging. You did the hard part. You remembered how to breathe. Let your eyes close now, if they haven't already. Let your limbs grow heavy, like they've been drifting too long in warm water. And if a ripple still moves through you, some stray thought or question, just let it pass. like all ripples do, gone before you notice. Tomorrow will come, but not yet, not for a while, for now there is only this soft, endless float in the space between stories. And sleep. Good night.